And now it's time for RTB 101, and this is the segment where we talk about practical questions to help equip you to share your faith with your friends and family more effectively. And I'm here with my friend and colleague, RTB's staff theologian and philosopher, Kenneth Samples.
Hello there.
And it is that time of the year where we find ourselves in a lot of conversations at holiday parties, office parties, family parties, and yet we always want to be mindful and intentional about how we're representing Christ when we're there, because people often know that we're a Christian if they know that we go to church or we name the name of Christ. So we want to be good ambassadors while we're there. So let's talk a little bit about some do's and don'ts. Let's think about first, what are some things that we could do in a party context to help represent Christ well?
It's a good question because holidays are important to a lot of people, and a lot of people are not Christian. One of the things I think about, Krista, is the message of Christianity. The coming of Jesus is about his love for us. It's about hope. It's about peace. So I try to convey those kind of values, that the celebration of Christmas is really about God's love for us and the gift of his Son.
So maybe one way we could do that is, as we're in conversation, kind of bringing that peace in our demeanor and in our way of being with them. One thing I like to do is just try to ask people questions. You often only talk to these people at parties maybe once a year or twice a year. So you can invite them into that conversation of, how are things? How's your life? And talk about the peace of Christ. Maybe there'll be some opening there for that.
That's right. And when we ask questions, when we find out where people are at, sometimes that'll give us an opportunity maybe to discuss the person of Jesus and what he's done for us. It's always good to ask questions. You might not want to get into a deep debate and involvement. And I try to distinguish between being very respectful and gracious toward people, but being critical of ideas. I'm not critical of people, but ideas we can go back and forward. But I think it's a time to maybe be a little bolder. I'm somewhat of an introvert, but I try to pray and ask the Lord, hey, who do you want me to talk to today? And sometimes he does great things.
That's a great point, because I find that when I take a few minutes before I go into that setting, because I'm also more of an introvert, and asking the Lord, like, hey, Lord, I want to partner with you in what you're doing. Help me take a risk today to step into something. Because sometimes as an introvert, I just want to opt out of all parties. What am I even doing here?
I share that sentiment from time to time, but you know what? I will often look for people who maybe are a little quiet, maybe people that I can come up and introduce myself to. And so I try to be empathetic and sensitive. But it is a great opportunity to, because this is a time in which people celebrate. It's great to be able to talk about what we think that celebration is all about.
That's great. Well, maybe what are some things we might not want to do, some things to avoid, some common pitfalls?
Yeah, I really think that when you're at work, you need to work. A work ethic is a really powerful witness. It's easy maybe to drink too much and things like that. I think you want to be careful about the kind of party atmosphere in that context. And as I alluded to earlier, I don't know that you want to get into a knockdown debate. You could always say to someone, hey, would you like to meet later for coffee? And we could kind of talk about these kinds of things. And I like the term you used, ambassador. How am I representing Jesus Christ? And how can I make God's message more gracious? And so those are some things I think about.
That's such a great point, because, if you haven't had a strong work ethic the whole year, and then you show up at the Christmas party and you're trying to witness to people, that doesn't always go over too well. It's in the day-to-day grind is where our character really shows up.
People want to know, why do you work hard? Where does that work ethic come? What's where does the fire in the belly come from?
Yeah.
And so I often tell people, work hard. That's a great way of somebody wanting to know why are you so driven and dedicated?
That's a witness in and of itself.
That's right.
Yeah. And then I love your point about how when we don't want to kind of have a reputation of being the difficult person at the party.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes in our zeal to witness for Christ, we can show up a little bit difficult and want to get people in a debate. I love your idea of, hey, if you're interested in continuing this conversation, let's go out for coffee, you know, next week or something like that.
That's right. I mean, it is a time of celebration. It's a time of seeing people you don't often see, but that can always lead to opportunities to have good discussions.
All right, Ken. Well, thanks for joining us. And if you'd like to check out some more of Ken's reflections on a wide variety of topics, I want to encourage you to subscribe to his blog, reflectionsbyken.wordpress.com, and also check him out on social media. He does respond to his own social media pages, and you can interact with him there. Ken Samples, everyone, thanks for joining me.